In this video, we talk about 12.3. We will learn how to find measures of dispersion, including range and standard deviation. I'm going to start with the terminology here in measures of dispersion. These are used to describe the spread of the data items in a data set. The range and standard deviation are the most common measures of dispersion. The range of the data is the difference between the highest and lowest data values in the data set. And this indicates the total spread of the data. Note that the range is a single number. The standard deviation is a measure of dispersion. The higher the standard deviation, the larger the spread of the data. In other words, standard deviation considers how far away the scores are away from the mean. So the higher the scores are away from the mean, the higher the standard deviation. And the lower the standard deviation, if the standard deviation is a lower number, that means that they are closer to the mean. And we will go over how to find the standard deviation in the handout that I gave you. So starting with example 1, find the range of the data values 24, 29, 29, 4, 17, 68, and 67. So the range is difference between the lowest and highest data values. So we subtract 68 minus 4 and we get 64. It's a single number that represents the total spread of the data. In example 2, we're going to find the range again in a stem and leaf plot. The highest number is 26. The lowest number is 6. So 26 minus 6 is 20. So the total spread or the range of this data is 20. Now we're going to calculate how to find the standard deviation. First, I will show you how to use the formula, and then I'm going to show you how to use a program, which you may just like because it's kind of a simple way to find standard deviation than to go through all of these steps. But we are going to do this by hand first. So the second measure of dispersion, called standard deviation, this is a value that represents how each data value in a given set differs from the mean of the data, which we call X bar. To find the standard deviation, we must complete these following steps. Step 1, find the mean. Step 2, subtract the mean from each data value. Step 3, square each difference from step 2. Step 4, add the values in step 3. So we're taking the sum of all of the squares of the differences. Then divide by n minus 1, where n is the total number of data values. And then finally, last step in step 5 is take the square root. So the formula here, it's kind of nice to just write the formula down because this helps you keep track of what we're doing. The standard deviation of a sample is equal to the sum of all the x minus x bars quantity squared divided by n minus 1. Then, so you take the square root of everything here inside. Okay, so this sigma is the Greek letter for sum. We have x minus x bar, and x bar, as you know, is the mean. So this is the difference from each data value from the mean. And then we square those differences and take the sum. Then divide by n minus 1, where n is the total number. So let's do an example by hand, and then we'll do this on our calculator. Suppose you take 5 tests and score the following. You have 100, 75, 55, 90, and 60. Find the standard deviation of your test scores. In other words, we're finding the spread, how far each of these scores are away from the mean. And we're going to get a single number that represents that. So the first step is, okay, let's go back here. The first step is to find the mean of the data. All right, so we're going to do this on our calculator, finding the mean. We're going to take 100. We're going to add up all these numbers, right? 75, 55, 90, and then 60. we add them up and then divide by the total number, which is 5. So the mean is 76. Now we're going to, by hand, calculate the standard deviation. So the first step was finding the mean. The second step is to subtract the mean from each score. So it's really nice to just create a table and keep track of your work. So in the first column, you're going to put each score. Those are your X's. In the second column, you're going to subtract the mean from each score. And in the third column, you're going to square the difference. All right. So in our first column, we have our scores. In the second column, you have X, which is 100, minus the mean, which we know is 76. 100 minus 76 is equal to 24. And then while you have that on your calculator, go ahead and square that. So I'm going straight across here, and we get the number 576. So that's the square of the difference from the mean. Now we're going to go to the number 75. Subtract 76. You get -1. When you square it, you get +1. And you want to do this for all the numbers. For all your X, we're going to subtract the mean and then square it. Okay, so once we have that completed, we have all these numbers. All right, so this is my X minus X bar squared. Let's take a look at where that is in our formula. See this? X minus X bar squared. Okay, now we're going to take the sum of all those. So the sum is 576 plus 1. We're going to add up all these numbers. I'll do that with you. So 576 plus 1 plus 441 plus 196 plus 256, and that's equal to 1470, right? So the sum, that's in the numerator here. That's 1470. We're going to divide that by n minus 1. So n, we just want to count how many we have here. That's 5 minus 1 is 4. All right, so we have the square root of 1470 all over n minus 1, which is 4. All right, so I'm going to divide what's already on my screen by 4, hit enter, and we have this number, 367.5. Now we take the square root, hit second X squared. You can retype it in there, or press the answer that you just had from the problem before. Press second and the negative sign. That brings down the answer on the line above. Hit enter, and you get 19.2. So the standard deviation is 19.2. Okay. So now we're going to do the same thing with a calculator program. And you're already familiar with this one variable stats now from the last video on how to find the mean and the median. Now we're going to use it to find the standard deviation. The first thing we do is enter the data in list 1. All right, here I'm going to clear out my screen. We're going to start over here. Second mode and clear. There we go. Okay, we're going to press stat, enter, clear out your list, and let's put in all the numbers. Once you have all 5 numbers, we're going to press stat, calc, enter. List is L1. There are no frequencies here, so clear that out. And then calculate. The mean is 76. The standard deviation is this S sub x. That's the standard deviation of the sample, and that's equal to 19.17, which was rounded to 19.2. So it's a little quicker here, right? Just put in your list and then run the one variable stats program. Okay. Example 4, find the standard deviation of the data in the stem and leaf table. Let's go ahead and list all the numbers here. We have 6, 11, 16, 21, and 26. If we do this by hand, first we need to, in step 1, find the mean. So again, we're going to do this 2 different ways. We're going to do it by hand and then by calculator. So the mean is adding up all the numbers and then dividing by 5. So the mean is 16. Now we're going to create our table with the x scores, the difference, x minus x bar in the second column, and the third column is squaring those differences. All right, so we've got all of our data here in the first column, and then we're going to subtract the mean from each data point. All right, so I'll do the first one with you. 6 minus 16, enter, and then press that squared button, and we get 100. In the next one, we have 11 minus 16, enter, we get -5, square it, and the answer is 25. We're going to do that for each of them. The last step is to add everything up. So the sum of all the differences squared is 100 plus 25 plus 25 plus 100. We could probably do this in our head. That's 250. Take that number, 250, divide it by n minus 1, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minus 1 is 4. And then the last thing is taking the square root. Press second x squared, answer, which is second negative, hit enter, and the answer is 7.91. So the standard deviation of this data set is 7.91. In example 5, use the display of data to find the standard deviation. Again, in each display of data, we want to go ahead and write down the scores so we can find our mean. All right, so here we have 7 that occurs 3 times. We have 8 that occurs 7 times. And we have 9 that occurs 3 times. So 7 times 3 plus 8 times 7 plus 9 times 3. Okay. Get the sum divided by 13. All right. So you can do that on your calculator. Now, remember, you can also write down the data in its frequencies in our list. So there's really nice methodology here to help you with these problems using calculator. Let's go ahead and put in the data first in list 1. First, we're going to clear. So in L1, we have 7, 8, and 9. The frequencies are 3, 7, 3. Now again, we need the standard deviation. So we press stat, calc, one variable stats, hit enter, list L1. The frequency here, we do have a frequency, and that's our L2. We press second 2, calculate. And here we have the mean is 8, and you were able to do that by hand as well. So the mean is 8, and the standard deviation, that's Sx, is equal to 0.707, which rounds to 0.71. Let's go to the next problem, example 6. find the standard deviation of the data. So let's go to Stat, enter, clear out your lists, put in the numbers, 18, 22, 18, 22, 18, 22. There's so many repeats. I want to make sure I've got them all. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 8 numbers. Okay. All right. So here, I could have put a frequency, but I decided not to. I could have said 18 with a frequency of 4 and 22 with a frequency of 4, but I decided just to write it down as is. So in my list 1 is all the data. And now we're going to find the standard deviation. Just a couple of buttons here, Stat, Calc, enter, and we're done, right? L1. Oh, L2 we don't have a frequency here because we listed each number here. Okay. Calculate. The standard deviation is 2.14. Okay. So if you want to do this by hand, we can shortcut this a little bit because 18 appears 4 times and 22 appears 4 times. What we could do is put the value 18 and 22, and instead of doing each of these 4 times a piece, go ahead and do the difference that it is from the mean. So the mean was 20, right? We got -2, then we square it, okay? Now, because this appears 4 times in our list, we're going to multiply that by 4, and you get 16. 22 minus 20 is 2. We square that, we get 4. That appears 4 times, so we're going to multiply by 4, and we get 16. The sum of the squares is 32. Okay, so if we were to do this using the table, the sum is 32. We divide by n minus 1. So here we have 8 numbers. Subtract 1, and we get 7. Then we take the square root of the answer, and that's 2.14. So just another way to do it. But as you see, if you can put all the numbers in your list, then all you need to do is, so you're going to put all the numbers in Stat, Edit, right, in that list. And then you're going to press Stat again and go to Calc and choose one variable stats. Okay. And you can easily get your standard deviation that way.